Hi guys, it's Dana. Today I'm going to talk about one of our founding fathers, James Madison, who was known as the father of the Constitution. Um, we're supposed to talk about a unique event or situation involving um, our person of choice. And so I'm going to talk about basically the James Madison in his dispute with George Washington and in his administration about the financial issues and basically in the aftermath of it, just a little bit how it just creates another political party that people eventually jump on. So starting at the beginning, um, James Madison was born March 16th, 1751 in Port Conway, Virginia. Um, and he is very established in America's history. I would think so. I would say so. He wrote the first draft of the U.S. Constitution. He co-wrote the Federalist Papers to get the Constitution ratified, and then he was also an instrumental part in the Bill of Rights, and he established the Democrat Republican Party, which I'm going to get to a little bit later. So, and of course, he eventually becomes one of our presidents in 1808. He becomes the fourth president, I believe. But so early on, you know, born to a well-off family. He was sent away to boarding school for his education. Um, like in high school and stuff, he was sent away. And then, he comes home for a couple of years. It was said that his father um wanted to really keep an eye on him. He had some mental issues. Um, that's pretty much all that was said. But he later he eventually goes to college. Um, so he goes to the College of New Jersey, which is now known as Princeton University. So it's very typical of a founding father to have that that's that good education. That pretty much all the schools in the North were known for. So he had a good education. He was well versed in a lot of things. He studied Latin, Greek, science, and philosophy, just to name a few. But that that's just touching, that outer layer. So um, and you will find that our founding fathers had a lot of disputes actually, and I just think it comes with the territory, their intellectual being. Like I said, they were all knowledgeable, um, and very well educated men, and so you would expect such things out of a group of people like that. So yeah, he graduates college in 1771. Um, Later through the years, though, he meets a man by the name of Thomas Jefferson, which I like to say that's kind of like that was like his bestie. They become good friends in life, and later down the road, but they meet each other and they're good friends. So James Madison and and like everyone else pretty much at the Constitutional Convention, um, for the most part, I would say, are kind of known as Federalist. Um, he campaigned for a, a strong central government. Um, so just to back up a little bit, Alexander Hamilton and James Madison, they both kind of were instrumental key parts in getting that convention in Philadelphia, which we know as the Constitutional Convention, together. They saw fit that that America should have a structured government to pretty much rule over all of the states, which the Continental Congress, that was kind of their part. So Alexander Hamilton and James Madison were doing this behind the Continental Congress's back, which it was illegal. Um, but George Washington and the Continental Congress, they got word of it. Um, basically, they just kind of invited themselves down and say, "Hey, we're gonna don't worry, I'll be there. Um, we're gonna get to the bottom of all of this. Basically, they're gonna get on one accord and create something great. Um, so yeah, so they're all at the Constitutional Convention in Philadelphia in 1787, and there a lot of things were proposed and brought up, and one of them was the Virginia Plan, and James Madison in particular expressed his ideas about forming a three-part government consisting of executive, legislative, and judicial branches. Um, he felt it was important for the new structure of government to have a system of checks and balances in order to prevent the abuse of power by any group. So, as you can see, we still use those branches of government today, executive, legislative, and judicial. So, like I said, he played an instrumental part in the United States government and the founding of it. Um, so yeah, many of his ideas were included and embedded into the Constitution. Um, although it is something that we clearly now use today, it did face opposition at its time. There are people who didn't necessarily agree with the government having such a strong role within the everyday life. There a lot of people were reluctant and hesitant at it because that was basically what they had experienced with the British. So they definitely did not want that again. So it was a lot of people that were reluctant. So James Madison teamed up with Alexander Hamilton and John Jay in special efforts to get the Constitution ratified through the Federalist Papers. So of the 55 people that were at that, um, 55 men that were at that the Constitutional Convention, only 39 signed. So it clearly didn't need a unanimous vote, but that just goes to show you, like, everyone wasn't on board with it. Yet, it was ratified and the new government was set up, despite those other people who were there for no reason, I guess. I don't know. So yeah, um, George Washington was one of those signees, obviously, and James Madison was an initial supporter of President George Washington in his administration. Um, but he soon found himself at odds with Washington over financial issues, and it was mainly because he objected the policies of the Secretary of Treasury, Alexander Hamilton. Um, it's just kind of funny because him and Alexander Hamilton were on the same page for a bit. I would say Alexander Hamilton, and James Madison were both instrumental in bringing upon that constitutional convention in Philadelphia, and they both wrote the Federalist Papers together. So, yeah, it's kind of funny that now they have, issues. Um, so basically, he believed that the plan, sorry, lined the pockets of the wealthy Northerners and was detrimental to everyone else. So pretty much the Southerners. I believe um, that it just really wasn't compatible with the way that Alexander Hamilton was going. It wasn't compatible with um, the plantations and slavery. So um, Madison, his family owned slaves and he inherited those slaves and stuff. So, it was kind of part of the South pretty much. So, um, that's where he got his money and stuff. But so obviously money was a pressing issue um after the revolution, but it was one of the pressing issues for that new government that they had set up. So the government was in debt $54 million after that Revolutionary War. Oh my gosh. Sorry. Um, so Hamilton was in charge of fixing that situation. He was the treasury. So, the money, it was that was his realm of things. That was, his job. Um, so like I said, he played an influential role in that Constitutional Convention. He wrote 51 of the 85 Federalist Papers. So, what is the problem? So he wanted to create a national bank modeled after the Bank of England. So the National Bank would be able to collect taxes, hold government funds, and make loans to the government and borrowers, basically. So, Jefferson, Thomas Jefferson, and James Madison, they're buddies. They're like, that's kind of not what we had in mind. So they say is, on Republic, it would encourage speculation and corruption within the government. And they just say, it's just unconstitutional. They did not give the Congress the power to do so. Um, so, it's like, wait a minute. We didn't say anything about you creating a bank. And then, Hamilton, he just says, it's an implied power. He replies with saying, but you gave us some powers, so yeah, basically we can't. So he says it's an implied power, and that the Congress had the power to create a bank because the Constitution granted federal authority to do anything that is necessary and proper to carry out its constitutional function. So this was passed in 1791. They did not listen to Jefferson and Madison. So this is still passed, um, despite the founding fathers and even one of the writers of the Constitution who says, "Hey, this is unconstitutional." Um, but then you have another um, person who played an influential role in the Constitutional Convention saying, "Hey, it's an implied power, so yeah, we kind of can because we're doing what is best in that constitutional role." Yeah, in a constitutional function, according, in this place, it's the fiscal duties. So, you know, it's passed. They created in shortly after, around that time when this passed, Thomas Jefferson and, James Madison abandoned the Federalist Party because obviously it's like, hey, we don't agree with that. And yeah, they create the Democratic Republican Party. So yeah, that I just really found that part interesting because um, for someone who worked hand in hand with Alexander Hamilton, um, to just really like disagree, I was like, well, that's kind of cool to me. So yeah, but yeah, that's all I have for you guys today.